I've been at Ball State, I think, 28 years. And I'm getting close to the end, you know, as it happens to everybody. And so this is kind of like, it's not a retrospective, but because I don't want to think of it that way, but there's a lot of kind of work up here. One of the things that I'm going to do is anything that gets sold, I'm going to donate to a scholarship that I have they'll go to a painting scholarship. So if you buy something, the proceeds, my proceeds will go to that. So even if you don't like me, you can buy it and I'll go to it. So I'll go to some deserving student. I want to shout out to the painting students and students that came tonight. Thanks for coming. And so I'll just kind of do a quick overlay. So I grew up in Texas, and my early work that I made when I was there was more like a critique of Americana. And I did that for a long period of time. And when I went to grad school, I changed it a lot, but it was still, I've kind of been a person who I've only ever had one good idea. And I found a way to kind of, but if you have one good idea, it can last a long time. And so these are all kind of permutations of one idea. And when in grad school, I ran across a word called dyscrasia, which is a Latin term for a bad mixture of the humors of the body. Because it used to be that they thought that you had 4 humors in the body, which was sanguine blood, black bile, yellow bile, and the wonderful phlegm. And if these things got out of order, then your body would be out of order, you'd be sick, and that's why they would bleed people. So, which usually was not helpful. But at any rate, so dyscrasia is a bad mixture of humors. So the way I kind of view the world is it's kind of a constant bad mixture of humors. And all those things that my family was kind of like, I was always like in an opposite world in my family. Because the things I was always interested in were sort of like, a polar opposite of kind of what I was taught was the reality of the world. And so I've kind of always, so these pieces are about this kind of a critique of ideological ideas that can't work or can't fix. And the problem with ideologies, the way I see them, is that if you have a really fixed, and I think it's hard not to have an ideology. It's much easier to have an ideology because it answers a lot of questions for you. But fixed ideologies can't change. And it doesn't matter what you bombard them with, they're fixed. And so they're all critiques of that kind of idea of ideology. And so that beyond dyscrasia, there's different, this is, I forget what series this was from, but the one on the end is probably the oldest, and that's called opposing forms. So it's like, the idea of things in opposition. Then there was, I did a whole series called the Bush Wars, which was 8 years of that, right? And then there was one called the Blender Years, which is kind of the years after that. And then had a series called Arrival, which I'm still working on. The pieces that are up there are a creation myth. So I have this sort of grouping of sort of series that kind of float in and out. And a couple of people have asked me, so how do you plan things? And sometimes they're planned, and sometimes they just, the way I like to work the best is just to start something and then start a bunch of things and then sort of like find my voice in that process. And the thing I've always, because I haven't really been able to paint with this. And so I finished this off. This was one that's been hanging around forever. And this one is called Hiding Out, which is kind of where I think I'm at this way with the world, is I'm just kind of done with it. I'm just going to hide out and hope that it goes away, because there's no more logical arguments that can work against space lasers and things like that. So this is a new series that was part of a series called The Great Lying, and it deals with, in the series there's things that relate to the Permian period, which was the most substantial loss of life on the planet, was at the end of the Permian Triassic boundary. It's when Pangea broke apart. And so there was, I think it was like 92% of the Earth species perished. That's when trilobites finally bit the dust. And so this was a piece called Under Rodinia. And Rodinia was another supercontinent that existed prior to Pangea. And very little is left of it because it's mostly been dissolved into the mantle. But the only thing that was alive at that point in time was like bacteria. And so that's kind of what that was. So they're all kind of ranges. The one here is called Huddled Pies. That's another one was floating around. I actually did the wash for that. The last time we had a show here, I came in on a Saturday, and I did the wash for that, and it sat around, and I painted it, and it was one painting for a while, and then I was like, that painting sucks. So I just never had enough stuff in it, and so this is Apotheos. I think what does the title say?
Huddling pies.
Huddling pies. This is a form I call apotheosis, and is one I use repeatedly. Apotheosis is that sort of grand moment, you know, in Florence, the Medici ceiling in the town council. You can see the apotheosis of one of the Medicis, which is like he's on a cloud, he's going up, you know. But I think the idea of an apotheosis is a rather grand notion for oneself. And so this is huddled pies. So you'll see pies sometimes, and pies represent the idea that there's a slice of truth that everybody has a piece of. Some people don't even have a slice, but there's a slice of piece. The best I have is a slice, but there's a whole bunch of pie that's out there that I don't have it. And so as much as I'm ever going to know, it's only a piece of what is to be known. Earlier I was asked about sort of there's a hot dog over here in this one. This one's called ideology machine. And so there's a kind of boarded up contraption with sort of some like kind of a cartoonish human heart. And I was asked about what's a hot dog mean. The hot dog's a sort of stand-in for male ego. I mean, quote unquote. And so it's this idea of male constructions that have, you know, that dominate and create problems. And so it's an ideology machine, and it's kind of a whack-a-mole game. So whatever new kind of thing pops up that doesn't fit the machine's idea, and the machine is a ramshackle contraption balanced on one wheel, so it has no. But those kind of machines are really hard to get rid of and hard to dismantle. And the idea of things being boarded up is that's all we ever do. We don't ever go and make core repairs. We seem to be incapable of core repairs. We just keep slapping new boards onto stuff, and so we don't really even know what the original idea or contraption was, but we just kind of keep making new ones. The one on the end is called Megas, and that's pretty. I guess that's maybe 10 years old or something like that. And so there's a variety of different things here, combinations of watercolor, inks, acrylics, charcoal, mixed and matched in different ways. Then there's a few encaustics. There's one here with the shoe leather. I did a brief stint as a shoe repairman here in Muncie for a bit. And when I was, you know, I've had a lot of jobs before I started teaching. And I can tell you, my best day as a shoe repairman doesn't even come close to my absolute most horrific day as a teacher. It's been a blessing to have been able to teach and to sort of learn. You'll learn as much as you teach, and so that's been a real blessing. So kind of why I want to. So whatever anybody wants to get one, that I want it to go back to the students. And so if you have a couple of questions, perhaps I can ask those if they're not too personal.
So I've seen you paint in other styles. You very kindly taught a workshop at the Art Museum when I was there on Richard Diebenkorn and his style of painting. And so it makes me wonder, seeing your subject matter and your style of painting, what is it about your style that makes you you, but why this style too?
Well, I think my work is kind of cartoonish in a way, I think, and sort of metaphorical. I mean, I couldn't paint this realistically, because if I had if there's a head underwater, it's not going to make a decapitated head. And so, so there's no way to make that a real painting, so it has to function as metaphor. And I've always had this notion, I've never really been that interested in painting realistically. I admire it when people can, but for me, I like real enough. I think I'd rather, and I also like when people look at things that that it has something that's very realistic, like, see if there's an example. Well, this is a quotation. I do a lot of art history quotations. This is like a Giotto quotation. And this one's called Angel Contemplating DNA, which this is really kind of the idea, the kind of crux between, the spiritual world versus the scientific world, And so DNA really changes everything in terms of like how you think about things, but I think it doesn't change for some people. And so, so it's just, again, it's just this sort of like these two worlds kind of sliding past each other all the time. So in this one, like the hiding out one, like obviously he's kind of looks safe, but he's not literally decapitated, but it's only a portion of a person. So by being hidden out, his physical body is not there. And so there's something missing in this. So although it's nice to sort of turn away from reality, not watch the news or something. Of course, it depends what news you watch these days. But if you turn away from reality, it harms you as well. So so for me, it's always worked better to sort of like have the work be kind of malleable. So it can be thought of in different ways. And as far as a style, I guess I have a style. My style would be that I'm lost. And I'm still looking. But I think there's a kind of cartoonish quality. I kind of want it to be humorous first. Because you can address serious, you know, if like Don Rickles, you know, that kind of humor can be funny. But unless you're willing to be part of the joke, it's not really good to dish it out. And I feel like I can dish it out better if I make myself part of the, because I don't have any answers. I just have observations. So, and you know, and I'm always learning more, even though I like to think I know enough. But did I answer your question?
You did, yes.
But I have a question. I like the painting at the beginning, the peach.
The peach.
But there's so much more than the peach. Could you explain that?
So, yeah, somebody asked me earlier how I made it, and so I had about, it's a watercolor wash, and so I did about 6 or 8 washes. I did a residency down in southern Indiana at the time, and I made got a few started when I was there, and then I got back, and I don't remember when I started working on this one, but I was looking at this idea of opposing forms, and so the one character is, I think it's from a Watteau painting, and it's a minstrel and a troubadour. And you know, Joseph Campbell talks about the troubadours as being the first people to sort of celebrate the idea of love between the eyes as opposed to love between like arranged marriages. And they were celebrating this, which at the time was a big risk for people to fall in love
Platonic love.
out of desire as opposed to like out of sort of obligation. Or you didn't have an option. You said like, I've got a daughter and I need some goats, so let's make a trade. And so this was kind of a challenging notion to the way things were. And on the other side is a root that was from a German print, and I don't remember what it was a root of. They didn't have Google then. You could have Googled it if only I had it. But so there's a blue root, so that is blue, passive, asleep. And so it's just trying to wake up this, and the peach is supposed to represent sort of the idea of a love, of a true love, as opposed to one of arranged or, you know. And of course, if anybody's been married long enough, you know, it's true, but the true is that you work at it. You know, the romance is a brief interlude, right? And then it becomes work. So that's kind of what that piece is about.
So that's why you say it's all peachy when something's good?
Well, and then again, it's like I want you to make your own, have your own metaphors for it.
Okay.
So like with anything, anybody can interpret. We're in a shirt underneath here.
Is it peach?
No, but I'll show you. I'm not gonna go so far. Steely Dan. So this was the band that influenced me a lot when I was a kid. And all their words and lyrics are very cryptic, and they can mean multiple things. And that's what I've always I like work that has, because I don't remember what it was, but somebody at an artist lecture one time would talk about like, you know, you can go look at the painting over in the museum. I think they were referring to a Rodin painting. I can't remember what it was at this point. Been a long time ago, but they said in that painting, when you're 20, you'll look at it and it'll mean one thing to you. And you come back in 10 years and you look at it and it's going to mean something different. And in 30 years, it'll mean something different. But the painting never changed. Your awareness of what you were looking at changed. And so kind of that's what I want the paintings to do, is to sort of, and I don't know if that works, guys. If you buy one, I'll know that it worked. But that's the notion, is that things grow and change as your awareness grows and changes. Hopefully, right? We're all growing and changing.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Want me to confuse you more? So you feel free to ask me anything afterwards, and make sure to check out Kim's work. It's really beautiful. It's got a lot of things. I'm sorry she couldn't be here. All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Scott.